Good evening and welcome to Power Brief. It is the 25th day of the month of June, the year 2020. We've had a lot of things happening in the first half of the year, and we are in the second half of the year 2020. Amid that, what has also found or met this effect is the media industry in this country. We are seeing a number of media companies retrenching or rendering a number of positions redundant. Tonight, we discuss how can we rebuild the Kenyan media industry. We are joined by Dr. Ezekiel Mutua, who is the Chief Executive Officer of Kenya Films Classification Board. We are also joined by Mr. Laban Cliff Onserio, who is the Deputy Director, Presidential Delivery Unit. Remember, this conversation is also live on our Facebook page, KAK TV Kenya, and our YouTube channel, KAK TV Kenya. My name is Cornelius Omuse, and I welcome you to this discussion to find ways on how we can rebuild this once coveted industry in the Republic of Kenya and beyond. Karibu sana Daktari into our show tonight, and you'll tell our viewers briefly what really drives you to stand in for the society every time there is moral decay. Is it something that comes from your heart, or is it because of the responsibility that the Constitution accords you?
Thank you very much. First of all, it's a pleasure for having me, and thank you very much for inviting me to this program, and congratulations for the good job that you are doing. Just to come to your question, right now, if you look at where the world is today, the influence of media, especially on our children, how media shapes views and values and character of people, and the need for integrity at all levels of society, you realize that art, entertainment, media, and there is actually a paper that was done by someone about the 7 mountains of influence. And if you look at the areas covered by media or the creative arts, entertainment and sports and so on, they cover most of the major areas of influence that shape the narratives across the world. And we know that art influences how people think, influences the things people like or they don't like, the behavior people are going to imitate, and how society is going to function is largely influenced by the narratives of the ecosystem and the ideas that people are pushing and are shared through the media. And so that's why it's so important for us. And so from where I sit, the influence and the passion comes, one, because you can see the need in society. Because I think great leadership is about responding to the issues that relate to the society at your time. And what I think is the greatest challenge facing society in my time is the influence of globalization on our society and our culture, is the effect of technology on our children, and is the effect of media in shaping values and national conversations, including the ideologies that govern how the world or determine how the world is governed. So that plus my conviction, of course, being a Christian and having been brought up or come through and started leadership at an early age in secondary school, and having been born again and all through my secondary school, CU chairman, school captain and all that, somehow that shaped my inclination towards a sense of right and wrong in respect to how I think society should function. So there's the element of my own personal conviction, there's the element of my own personal faith, and there's the element of the law and the work that I do. So generally, when you look at it, all that combination speaks to one thing, that there's need for national conversation on values, on our culture, against the evolution and the dynamics of a changing society that is geared towards evil, geared towards more obscenity, geared towards more negativity, including our politics. If you want to join politics right now, and you don't have the capacity to insult people or to say controversial things, you're not likely to be covered by the media. The media covers mostly people who are controversial, people who are banging tables, people who, it is like, who can insult more. So it's about the negative news. And I'm also a journalist myself. My training and my experience I'm a journalist, and I've worked all my life, 9 years in Nation Media Group, then Secretary General of Kenya Union of Journalists, Director of Information and Public Communications, Secretary of Information, and where I am now. If you look at my working life, it has all been around the areas of the media. Then my training, my master's and all the way to PhD level has been on communication studies. That has influenced my thinking in terms of how important the media is in shaping ideology, in shaping views, in promoting positive conversations, but also the negative effects of media in destroying moral values. And when you look at the world today, the breakdown of our moral values is the reason we are not developing, is the reason we have crime, is the reason we have loss of money in various institutions, both in public and private sector, is the reason why we have bad politics. It starts with the breakdown of our moral fabric. And if we can sort out the moral foundation and influence the media to talk about the positive social values, then we are going to contribute to the narrative about national development, sustainable development goals, and make our world a better place to live in. So I think it's about thinking of where are we now? What are the issues affecting society? And providing leadership from our various aspects of calling to contribute to the bigger picture. I think I'm only doing a small part. Other agencies and other people have their role to play as well.
Briefly, Daktari, the roadmap towards having a media environment that provides or promotes moral growth in the society. What is a brief roadmap that everyone can follow or stakeholders can actually put in place towards seeing that media does the right thing?
I think media is a product of society, just like all of us. And so it's unlikely to have sensible media when our politics are corrupt, when our families are corrupt, when our engagements as individuals lack integrity, and we have no sense of right and wrong. Media is also in business. And if you remember the 7 blunders of the world that Mahatma Gandhi spoke about, business without morality, if you talk about politics without principles, if you talk about religion without sacrifice, and so on and so forth, even character, knowledge without character. And when you look at all those issues, you realize that the roadmap can only be in laying a proper moral foundation and changing the way we do things. And I think for us here in Kenya, we are lucky that currently there's a process of building bridges initiative. That is the result of the handshake. And I think if we look at that and even change our constitution, but more importantly, have a national conversation about where we are and the things that are going wrong, how our children are getting exposed. You saw the cases that we were hearing. The numbers could be contested and disputed, but the truth is that we have a problem, whether there were 4,000 or 2,000, we have a moral issue in this country, and we need to address those issues. I think in terms of the roadmap, we did very well when in 2010, we got our constitution, which is broad document that governs the way we relate and the supreme law of the land. But there's one thing, it's one thing to have the constitution. It is totally a different thing to have the spirit of constitutionalism and adherence to the rule of law. And what the BBI does then is to try and bring in a culture. And there's a chapter about ethos and values. And I think that's the chapter we need to use to inculcate moral values across the spectrum of society. Ensure that everybody plays their role. And that is not just because the police is watching or somebody is watching. They say integrity is what you do when no one is watching. And therefore, BBI should have a broader reaching approach that will ensure that society is re-engineered in terms of the way we think. And I think COVID-19 has been a blessing in disguise, in that it has brought us to reflect on our values and the things that matter and how we live and the things that give us pleasure and joy in life and what exactly matters. And I think going forward, if BBI can lead to the change of constitution, if you remember when we were campaigning for the new constitution, we said 80% was okay, but there was 20% that we could deal with later. Some of those elements of 20% could have far-reaching implications that affect the entire mosaic of society. And so going forward, it will be essential that we look at our national development in view of our culture and our values, which should include integrity, commitment to work, patriotism, honesty, and resilience. So that if you build that through the school system, through the religious institutions, through our politics, so that our politics are not just the politics of who can buy voters, who can give more money, who can give more bribes, but it will become a process of values and a process of issues and campaigning on the platform of issues as opposed to violence and bribery. I think BBI is the roadmap for me, but I think COVID-19 also challenges every institution, including the media, to start rethinking, because some of them have been riding on betting and gambling adverts, on beer adverts. They've been riding on programs that sell immorality and obscenity. And now the truth is, if your clients were those kind of guys and they don't have money, or you are riding on the, like artists, for example, who are performing in clubs and bars and so on, and because that's where there is people got to spend more, you are just composing or creating content that fits that kind of clientele. Now that is no longer possible, and I think the challenge should be that now we re-engineer our business model to reflect the realities, and you cannot run away from values. I think a society without a moral foundation cannot grow. You look at the Asian tigers, you know, Singapore, Malaysia, North Korea, and so on. They grew fast by sorting out their moral values. And if you look at the founding fathers of those countries, they laid foundations that were based on integrity. And there was no negotiating on values and on the rule of law. You either follow the law or you don't. If you're a public officer and you partake of something inappropriately, some of them used to be even paraded in public and shot dead. Okay, so there was strict rules. People knew. In the United Arab Emirates, that country is a desert, but it's a model of world-class development. But desert turned into something that is an envy of many. I was in Singapore a few years ago, and I was surprised. While we were there, the country was paying its citizens dividends. You know, they had more than surplus. They had more than enough income for their budget, and they were even giving citizens, some dividends. Look at that kind of level of development. When you look at the per capita income of Singapore, the life there, the standards of livelihood, of living there, they are far better than the US. People move from the US to go and live in Singapore. Yet those are countries that were far way behind. Actually, during independence, we were either at par or they were behind us. How did they develop? When you look at the model that they used, they were not thriving on the kind of activism that we apply here, where we want freedom without responsibility, where people want to shout but not work, where people want to call anybody names and there's no culture, there's no respect for authority, there's no honor for God, people don't respect family and the parental authority and so on and so forth. I think we must go back to the basics, redefine through the BBI and through the chapter on ethos and national values, and rediscover that we went wrong somewhere. The waters, like Chinua Achebe said, where the water started beating us, correct ourselves from an individual level. This journey has got to begin with you and me, having a sense of right and wrong and developing towards building the national conversation and contributing by having the change in us ourselves. So it starts with us, but the BBI is the roadmap.
Now, there is this thing, Daktari, we are headed to the 2022 succession politics. Temperatures are already hot. And what's happening, there is a perception outside there that majority of the media companies have begun airing sensational news like in newspapers, headlines, and all that. You've performed your work well when it comes to morality. What is your advice to the stakeholders who are concerned with information that comes from media that can serve to incite the masses against each other or against certain politicians, especially as we head to BBI and other issues?
Like I said, there's a code of ethics for the practice of journalism that is enforced by the Media Council of Kenya, and it's actually that code of ethics is actually embedded now in the Media Council 2013 law. I think, first of all, media and journalists must be professionals. You cannot have disco DJs and comedians also masquerading as journalists. I think we need to professionalize, and it's up to the Media Council to set up standards and ensure that anyone who calls themselves journalists adhere to that code of ethics. The same way engineers must adhere to their code of ethics, doctors must adhere to the code of ethics, architects, and so on and so forth. You can't be a profession without a code of ethics. And so that code of ethics is a self-evaluation, and it's a what do I say, self-regulatory mechanism, so that everything is not left to government and to being forced to do it. We commit ourselves as a media people. And I say, if we were to follow, for example, take for instance the watershed period. It's very clear, and anybody opening a TV station or a radio station knows that between 5 in the morning to 10 in the evening, any program that is aired on national TV must be suitable for family viewing. But what do we see? Most of the TV stations, like you've said, they'll be running sensationalism, obscenities, and so on and so forth. The whole idea is because we have been oriented to think or socialize to think that it's a money at all cost. So if you show nudity or pornography and it is selling, that is what you're going to do, and you discard ethics. I think what the media houses are going through right now tells you that that sin does not sell and is not sustainable. That obscenity and defiance of the law and government does not sell, is not sustainable. And let me tell you about content. Dirty content does not sell. All this Wamlambez nonsense, tell me, who is going to give advice to someone who is just shouting Wamlambez? Are you going to see them on billboards? Because it must be the diversity of business opportunities that you can use. But the people create good content, the content that you can play in your car, in your house, in the office. That content will have a wider market. And that's the nexus between content classification and marketability of that content and sustainability. What COVID-19 has taught us, and the experience that the media houses are going through, is that that does not sell. That content does not have to be dirty to sell. You can appeal to a certain section of deviants and perverts with your Wamlambez and with your nonsensical gengeton. But in the long run, that content will not give you money. You're going to get into drugs and depression. A lot of them are dying. How many musicians are we burying now? Because they can't sustain themselves. They were only used to the glory of the moment, one hit wonder, and somebody thinks they are very great. Those are the issues we need to look at and tell our artists it's not a war, it's not them versus us. They need to create content that I can consume with my children. There is content for adults, yes, and we are not against freedom of expression, but you cannot just make it look like every content must be about obscenity or about sex. I think that's a lack of imagination. That is laziness of the mind. And going forward now with COVID-19, people are going to survive. Companies that are going to survive will be companies that are riding on integrity and on morality. Those people, we are going to lose money. This is now their Babylonian experience, and they are going to learn, and they will have to shape up, or they will be out of business. I have seen some of the artists, celebrities, who are now selling vegetables by the roadside, and they were appearing on TV. Why is it not sustaining them? It's because they were appealing to a small section of society driven by people with dirty money, and what we call in this country or in the world sin taxes or sin businesses does not sell. That is about beer, gambling, and so on. Yes, in most countries it generates money. That's what Las Vegas is built on. But the crime proceeds that come, or the crime that comes out of it, it's the proceeds of that money. It is the same with us here. So these socialites and the dirt and the pornographic content that is being paraded, I can tell you from where I sit and with my experience, it is not sustainable. You cannot sell pornography and sell obscene content and expect to get a parent or people who matter, companies that are money like Safaricom or respectable media houses airing that content. It will take another pervert, and the perverts are very few. They are loud, but they are very few. So look for where there is market, and the market is in content-rated general exhibition that is suitable for family viewing. Like I said, I can play with my children, I can play it in my car, I can play it in the office, and I don't need to fear that there will be something inappropriate. So this is the way to go, to rethink and calibrate our business models to fit what society needs and use art and the media to serve the needs of society. Sensationalism and the politics of insult. Part of why the media houses is dying is because they were used to following Raila, because they knew Raila will attack government. Raila will oppose everything the president says. Now, when they shook their hands and now they're working together, you have nothing else to say. Raila can stay out of the headline for a week or 2 weeks.
But Daktari, can't they create another Raila? Can't they create another Raila?
What is telling you is that the models you have relied on are not sustainable. If you are relying on the politics of when a dog bites a man, it's not news. But when a man bites a dog, it's when you have headlines. How many times does a man bite a dog? So that narrative of it's what is bizarre, what is controversial, what is sensational. Society is changing and people are becoming, there is always that excitement. When the phone came, people are very excited. Now it's normal. I can keep it here. I'm not excited about an iPhone. But there's a time when everybody wanted to have this. They want to try this. We'll reach a time when now people even migrate from the iPhone and they'll move to something else. So you need to rethink the business model and think ahead of the times. The business or the journalism of when a dog bites a man is not news. It's not sustainable. The business model or journalism that says that development stories do not sell, that content must be dirty to sell, that model is not sustainable. That's why I'm saying there's a nexus between what we do, film classification, content classification, and the marketability of that content. It is what will work in the end. And if you look at the people who have made money in the world, look at Hollywood, for example. They're great people, great artists. They didn't make their names by being obscene. There must be a cultural issue. If they were obscene within the context of the American culture, which is not considered as obscene. Nollywood, close to home here in Nigeria, is the second highest contributor to the GDP of that country. They are not making their content by being dirty. If you watch most Nollywood films, they end with "To God be the glory." In other words, they are appealing to the wider family viewing segment. So this is what I'm saying. So going forward, I'm not saying everybody must play gospel. That will not be possible, and I wish it was possible. But I'm saying create content that inspires hope, create content about our stories, about our culture. Let us learn about our country, the beauty of our country, our beautiful sceneries, our wildlife, our flora and fauna. Let us focus on the things that are positive, not just politicians who are insulting one another or the guys who are saying dirty things. Let us focus on the beauty of life and the goodness of humanity, not just the negative side of it.
Finally, Daktari, there is this department in the government called Government Advertising Agency. There is a number of stakeholders in the media industry who feels that this agency is the one that has caused the problem that is in the media industry right now of having less cash. That there is no money for advertisement because a lot of advertisements were coming from the government. How true is this, you having worked in the media and even currently being a policy maker and a policy implementer in the national government?
It could be a contributor, but it's not the only thing to blame. Like I've said, we failed to align our business model as media to the digital migration. And you remember how the media resisted digital migration. They didn't want digital migration. They stuck to their old ways of doing things. We had to go up to the Supreme Court. When we won that case, I was the Secretary of Information then, working with the CS Matiang'i and CA to push for digital migration. And the media refused to adapt to the new environment. And they resisted change. We went up to Supreme Court. We won. Then the media switched themselves off for 3 weeks. If you remember, there's a time there was no TV in Kenya for 3 weeks. That shows you that you resist change, change will also punish you. They resisted to re-engineer their business model. It's like now, you cannot say I must come to your studio now for an interview like this. You have already moved to the new environment where I can give you the interview from from home, and we can work from home. You cannot now stick to your old ways of going to the office, doing physical meetings in the midst of COVID-19. So that thinking is what we need. Yes, government is a big advertiser. Government owes the media money, but even if you are paid everything that you're owed by government, you will still not survive if your business model is pegged on selling obscenity, negative politics, and bizarre stuff. Until we reach a point where we become innovative in a positive way, and that our stories and our media speaks to issues that move development, that drive development, that drive positive social values, that make society better, not to destroy it, that will ensure that we are not just parading violence before our children and creating more criminals or violent people, or airing content that makes people think government doesn't matter. You can insult the president and it's okay. You can insult your parents and it's okay. That kind of approach to life is destroying society. And increasingly people become aware and they start withdrawing their advertising. They start saying, I cannot run my advert on this station because it is not a very clean environment. You see, so while you are thinking about government advertising agency, and those are contractual issues, obviously, if you are owed money, you'll be paid. And there's a process of following the money, including going to court. Why are people not going to court? So GA cannot be the only reason. Yes, I agree, we need to pay, we need to clear. And of course, businesses in government, because of budget cuts and so on, we have to plan. I know I am one of the agencies that have advertised. I always talk to the media houses where I'm advertising for them to know the model that I will use to pay them. Because the accounting officer, if you come to me, and they are now all over pushing us to give them adverts, and we are telling them, look, with the COVID-19, then somebody say, oh, they reduced from 2 million to 500 to 200. You can see the desperation. Then you tell them, yeah, I'll run the advert, but I can only pay you next year. Now that you can't say it's killing business, because it was an agreement between a willing seller and a willing buyer. So let us look at the bigger picture, which is we need to re-engineer our business models, but we also need to use the media and the creative arts to serve society and to bring positive change.
Finally, before I let you go, Daktari, the government, which you are part of it, you are our father in the media industry. Are you open for another dialogue to see that we re-engineer the media fresh on what you have touched? It's very emotional, they are very deep, but there are issues that need to be discussed. Unajua mtoto akilia wembe huwa anasema anapewa, lakini kimkata unamchukua unamweka bandage. Are you willing to call us as the stakeholders in the media industry to discuss these matters afresh on how to improve the media industry in Kenya?
Absolutely. In fact, I've just arranged a meeting with the Digital Broadcasters Association, and you should be a member, because it's the new, it's the association of the guys like yourself. I'll be meeting them on Friday at 2:30 by Zoom, and that is the conversation that we are going to be carrying out. I've seen a lot of engagement between government and the media. You have been part and parcel of the COVID-19 campaign, and there's a lot of money coming from WHO and other agencies to promote this campaign. And like I've said, the placement of our adverts as government and as people who value decency are going to be determined to a large extent, not in the old model where we were placing it because this program is popular because you sell pornographic content. No, we're going to say we want to use government resources in a way that we also build values and tell our stories and our culture. So going forward, we are going to be encouraging media houses to have that kind of conversation. I saw Media Council is giving 100 million as relief to the media industry. You need to check what kind of money is there for you. The Ministry of Sports and Heritage is also giving 100 million as a stimulus package to the creative industry, musicians and DJs and comedians and film actors and producers. You also need to check what is there for you. So it's about individual commitment and approach to ensuring that your business survives, as opposed to just riding on government policies generally. I want us to engage as individual companies and see how we can help you. But the important thing is, I think you need to become a member of DBA if you're not, and then see how we can have the meeting on Friday. But going forward, let me say government is very open. We have been given a policy and directives by the president to ensure that we also create opportunities to give reliefs to the industry and to the businesses that we regulate. So we are very now lenient on media houses, on filmmakers, and on the creatives as a way of ensuring that we also carry them along as part of our country and as part of our citizenry. And going forward post-COVID-19, we have a broad range of stimulus package that we'll be announcing. We can't announce them too early because we don't know how long this situation will persist. So yes, government is open for dialogue. Government is open to support your business. Government is open to support journalists. We cannot actually, while we are blaming the media, we cannot wish a situation where there was no media. I'm very worried about the loss of jobs and the way media houses are treating journalists, because ultimately there is no country that can develop without a free and independent press. I think the milestones that we have achieved and to come to the democratic space where we are, we couldn't have achieved these milestones without the media. The media is the cornerstone of democracy, the lifeblood of democracy. And there cannot be a free and open society without a free and independent media. So supporting media houses should be even the concern of governments to see how the media houses will survive, to serve the purpose of being the custodian of public interest, being the providing the information, entertainment, education, and so on. But more importantly, speaking for Wanjiku and ensuring that the media continues to play the role it should play as an agent of social change. So I think that's very important. That conversation, of course, in the wake of COVID-19 is a new conversation that we are going to carry on as we see how this situation is developing.
Many thanks, Daktari Mutua, for your time. Out of your busy schedule, you've made it to be with us. I know you're headed elsewhere. We appreciate and we do not take everything that you've told us for granted. We make a commitment as KAK TV that we'll attend that meeting on Friday to see on how, as a station, we can partner with you and the government towards ensuring that we have credible media in Kenya. We appreciate and we actually wish that you'll continue watching KAK TV and especially Power Brief and all other shows, and I'm sure you will like it because we are there to what the law says and what the government expects. On the second part of the show, we shall have Mr. Laban Cliff Onserio, with the Deputy Director of the Presidential Delivery Unit, will also give us his brief analysis on what he sees about the media industry, and we shall see at the end what we are going to achieve. Thank you so much, Ms. Ezekiel Mutua and Daktari Ezekiel Mutua. And one word to people concerning KAK TV. You've never watched it, but you've actually had an interaction with us. Do you endorse us?
Absolutely. If this is anything to go by, I think you're doing a credible job, and please keep it up.
Thank you so much. See you on Friday. God bless. Have a great evening.
Thanks, sir.
Goodbye. Thank you. Many thanks, Mr. Laban Cliff, the Deputy Director, Presidential Delivery Unit, for finding your time to join us on Power Brief tonight on KAK TV. This is a wonderful moment for you to come here, and we are discussing this issue of the media industry, the plight of the journalists. In the past few days, we've seen a number of media companies retrenching their staff, and also there have been this claim that media companies cannot sustain themselves. There is this claim that the government advertising agency is part of the reasons as to why media cannot sustain itself, because initially they used to engage government departments one-on-one, but right now it goes through a procedure and many other issues. So we called you as a former journalist, and still you're a journalist and a person in the government, to shed light on this matter. How can the media reinvent themselves to find revenue for their day-to-day activities, and how further can the media stand from what is happening at the moment?
Thank you very much for having me here. It's indeed a pleasure, and look at what technology has done, brought us together, and this is an interview that would have happened in the studios, but here we are. Yes. It talks about innovation, it talks about the spirit, it talks about the changing landscape in the media industry. Indeed, you rightfully mentioned my position right now, but I'd also want to just speak as an alumnus of the Reuters Institute at the University of Oxford, where I undertook a research on the changing climate in the media industry and how media can reinvent themselves. Note this, I took the research 2 years ago, okay? What COVID has done, it has hastened the process of how media should reinvent themselves. Now, what you're seeing, and of course, we are feeling really sorry for our friends who've lost their jobs, but it was coming. This was coming, and you mentioned something in your intro there, mentioning that perhaps could it be that the government advertising agency is to blame for what is happening? I don't think that's the case, because in that innovation report, and I'm happy to share the details in our call, is that media can look at other revenue generating streams. Now, what we know is that we're always fixated on the news, okay? And the news is one element of it, but there's also needs to be a business model that sustains media organizations. Sadly to say, most of our top media leaders do not understand that, because they just look at the bottom line and that's it. If you look on the developed world, in fact, where the digital news report has been launched, is that you see there's a concerted effort to come up with, say, for instance, the Financial Times, to come up with Financial Times, the newspaper, Financial Times on the digital platforms, Financial Times on the event platform, so that you can actually host events and charge people to actually come in based on the brand you have as that respected media organization. So the technology is really at the core of this. The level of adoption of technology in media companies in East Africa is pretty low. You can maybe attest that to the internet penetration, but Kenya being at levels of over 85%, we are at a very good stage to actually adopt this technology. But have we been doing that? Not at all. So what COVID has done, it has hastened the process of how media companies should actually embrace, reinvent themselves as fast as possible in view of the changing landscape.
Now, according to you as a person who's been here for some time, this issue, does it have to lie within the capacity of these media companies, or it has got something to do with the experts like you has gone through Oxford and you have a deep understanding of this? Is it ignorance or capacity?
I would say it is capacity, because most of these fellows actually are in these newsrooms. But sadly to say is that when you come back, you're caught up. You know, media, journalism is not an easy role. You know, you can imagine how the day goes. So when you're about to produce maybe a bulletin, it takes your whole mind, takes your whole energies. You can't really concentrate on trying to really innovate. So what I came to realize, and something that is going to fuel me, because I miss journalism. I miss being on your seat. You know, I miss those days. So the next time I'll be back in the newsroom, I'll have to look at the organizational culture. Do the people in the newsroom, are they open towards innovation? Are they liking innovation? Is there a spirit of innovation? There's a quote that I keep on repeating, is that culture eats strategy for breakfast. So you might have the best papers in the world, but if you don't have the culture that supports it, that's as good as zero. So I know there are going to be better days ahead. There's something in me that wants to talk about management, financial management in the media industry. If you look in Kenya, we only have two companies that are listed, two media companies that are listed. The number one media company is a family business. You know, the business journalists, those are the numbers we look at. Now, we never see the financial report, we never see the governance, we never see the structures. So something in me tells me that perhaps there must be some bit of an underlying corporate governance issues into why will firing be the first resort? You know, why will firing be the first resort? You know, after 3 months, say, of a dwindled financial, slowdown. But anyway, those are details now that we can discuss, of course, now with the leadership and what have you.
Looking into this, a few minutes ago, Dr. Ezekiel Mutua has really blamed this problem on the content. He went further by saying that the content that the Kenyan media produces is what is even making the investors to shy away from giving them adverts. I don't know what is your version of this from Ezekiel Mutua, the doctor, the good doctor actually, the moral police.
I wouldn't have it. I must admit, I haven't seen the content. I haven't seen the street, but I know he's very abrasive. He's always challenged the media to be very innovative and try to think of creative ways of how to generate the content. We must admit our content is really very highly political or highly politicized. Somebody said that perhaps maybe the nudity or sex sells. Maybe perhaps that's the reason. Him, of course, being in charge of the Kenya Film and Classification Board, that's his mandate to actually look at that. Mm-hmm. So moving away from, in light of what he mentioned, is let's talk about content in media companies. Mm-hmm. I've always say, for instance, had a problem as a business journalist where we have 20 minutes of political news, 5 minutes of business, 5 minutes of sports, and the bulletin is over. Okay? Mm-hmm. So is that an issue about content? Maybe not. But there's a problem about the audience that we serve. Now, you go online, you go on YouTube. A good story out, for instance, about maybe farming, about how youth should go back to farming and how there should be innovations around farming. It's never given the concentration. Mm-hmm. But stories about who slept with who or someone has been caught in a scandal, look at the YouTube views. Mm-hmm. You know, look at what Kenyans are actually watching. You know, as a report done by NIDO, which is a research firm, talks about sports, sex, and other social aspects that Kenyans actually yearn for from the media industries. So it's about our audience. And what do our editors do? Our editors serve this need, you know, to give it to the audience. So I don't think the blame should be on the media. The blame should be particularly on the audience that we serve who actually demand for this. But at the same time, media should also come in as a voice of reason and say, you know what, let's perhaps give a lot more information on this as opposed to this. Because right now we see health is a very critical aspect. In fact, I think there's a TV station that will just come up with maybe how to take care of yourself, you know, how to be healthy, how to live well. Mm-hmm. Perhaps they'll get content. You can talk about COVID. You can talk about exercising. You can talk about eating. You can talk anything, name it, you know, because people have realized that now healthcare is much more important.
Mm-hmm. Now, we come back home, Mr. Laban, about what you've talked of consumption of the content. That is the viewers or those people who consume are the ones who are determining what comes out at the end of the day. So does the media has to step forward and tell the people that, look here, this is what we are supposed to do, or we just give someone chenye ametaka basi apewe?
Media shapes the narrative. It shapes the conversation. The headline story is what everyone speaks about the entire day. Mm-hmm. The first story on your bulletin is what people will remember. Mm-hmm. So yes, you might have a political story, and I've seen this with one of the top media stations in the country, mm-hmm. is that yes, there's a political story, mm-hmm. but you will not start with it as the number one. You'll kind of hide it in number 2, number 3, number 4. Mm-hmm. You get? And maybe talk about social issues and talk about pornography among school-going children, mm-hmm. so that you hook the viewer into something that is quite critical, mm-hmm. and affects them, mm-hmm. you know? So that you can actually now use it to now lead them into the political side onto it.
Mm-hmm. Now, as a long-term practitioner in the media industry and also a scholar, I've just realized you've done a deep analysis, which you will share with everyone at a later date. What is the roadmap towards rebuilding, reinventing, in summary, the steps that the Kenyan media and all stakeholders have to take in order to see that one more time we have a credible media in this country to be emulated far and beyond?
So if I got you right, you mean what's the future basically?
Now, the roadmap in summary, the future of media.
Wow, I'm honestly very sorry, and I'm actually very worried about the future of media. And I feel really saddened because, well, as much as I moved into government in the presidential delivery unit, which of course I'm also doing journalism work and just trying to report on the president's agenda, which is very critical at this time. Mm-hmm. I feel really sorry that I could not fully apply my research into media houses and maybe try and see an outcome onto it. Mm-hmm. My heart goes out to the people who are going to lose jobs. I just got off the call with a friend of mine in a big media house, and they told me they're having a management meeting this afternoon to discuss the future of jobs. Personally, I feel that after COVID, or I should not say after COVID, so I should say in view of where we are at, in view of this pandemic, it's time to get our feet on the ground, all hands on deck. We need to work hard and see how to reinvent ourselves through innovation. We've had 2 media companies start innovation hubs, but the ideas are never taken up. Yeah, we saw this coming, but the level of adoption, the level of taking into seriousness what these innovation hubs meant was not done. I feel there are better days ahead for media houses. Media houses need to reinvent themselves. Media houses need to come up with good content, it's true. And good is relative because it's basically trying to understand your audience, but also come up with voice of reason. Media houses leadership, our editors, please create an environment of innovation. Create a spirit of a culture that can actually sustain a strategy going forward. Because all these things lie in the boardrooms. You design the strategy, but it's never followed through in the media houses. So we hope that perhaps this time for once, everyone, and forget about the hierarchies, everyone needs to put their hands on deck, have a meeting of minds, and see how we can save media houses that have been in existence for years and years, that now are actually being threatened into existence. But also at the same time, it calls for partnerships. If you notice, we've had partnerships, which is very critical, with the government, not criticism, with the government. As a former journalist, I'm willing to give content to media houses to see how they can actually use that content. I feel that this is a time to reinvent ourselves, and my heart really goes out to the people who've lost jobs, journalists. Don't go home and wallow or just say that your career is over. Look at avenues where you can actually self-promote. You have YouTube, people are beginning YouTube channels. We have Facebook, we have Google. Go out there, use those resources to sustain yourself. At this time, what I strongly feel should be the rallying call for our media houses, the giant media houses, the small media houses, those who are innovating, is to really look at how do we create a spirit of innovation in our teams. Yes, you can be a journalist, but I know you might have a very good idea into how organizations can remain afloat, into ensuring that they actually stay and live up to the billing. So personally, I have a very strong feeling that all is well. Post-COVID, or shall I say, with COVID, we are going to be innovative. We're going to look at ways of how we can self-sustain, and it's going to be a good road up from here. So I feel that if I could just talk to any leader who's in the media house, any editor, innovation, a culture to drive strategy, creating partnerships, and also not to burying your head in the sand and not listening to that small intern who's doing your stories. They might just have an idea that will help the company stay afloat.
And then finally, Mr. Cliff, any opportunities in government and also far and beyond, maybe non-governmental organizations and even international foundations and international organizations that can partner with media towards raising revenue? Any idea about that?
Fantastic. We have a lot of ideas. We have developmental partners who we work with. I'll speak particularly on perhaps the achievement of the Big Four agenda. We have many UN bodies are keen. Take, for instance, housing. We announced a great partnership with kind of the United Nations Habitat, especially when His Excellency the President visited the Washington, D.C. We see a lot that's going to happen. So mine is just to say that also media houses should actually rethink their mode of how they pitch for partnerships, and not really look at it as a way of just trying to make money, but also look at it as a social good, or shall I say a common good, that you see your role as a media in terms of informing, entertaining, educating, to actually use that, to for the benefit of mutual benefit, both of government and of media houses as well.
Many thanks, Mr. Laban Cliff, for finding your time to be with us on Power Brief on KAK TV. We will wish to invite you more and more as we move forward. Many thanks. Have a good evening and God bless you. Till we see you next time.
Thank you very much, and thank you for having me. Look forward to our next chat.
That is very powerful. It's been a wonderful discussion from Dr. Ezekiel Mutua, the Chief Executive Officer, Kenya Films Classification Board. He has taken us through the history of media industry in Kenya and how other developed countries do in order to see that they remain afloat even amidst different pandemics. Mr. Laban Cliff Onserio, who is the Deputy Director of the Presidential Delivery Unit, has taken us through on how innovation can help Kenyan media industry also to grow and be able to fight all this that is happening at this time that the country is facing a pandemic that is a global one. We appreciate your overwhelming responses on our social media platforms. From me, Cornelius Omuse, till next Thursday, I wish you a very good night.